G'day, my name is Jeff. Tony, Abby and I are tour guides at the Perth Bell Tower. We'll take you through an exploration of the Bell Tower story and its history.
This is the Bell Tower in Perth, Western Australia. It doesn't really look like a bell tower, does it? But it certainly is. For we have so many bells here of so many different types.
And if you'd like to know why, let's hear the story from the architect.
When you think about cities, Sydney, the icon is the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and now the Opera House. New York, Statue of Liberty. In Copenhagen, there's a little mermaid that sits on a rock, and she's not that big, but she's become the icon of Copenhagen. So we thought about, it could become an icon of Western Australia or of Perth. And Hamish Ailey's design focused on basically the axis, the water axis and Barrack Street axis. So we developed it up in our first design that all the engineering would be in glass, and yet we put the bell tower in there. And bell towers bells when they're ringing have amazing dynamic forces, and we thought, by putting in a glass tower, it's very different to the stone towers and that we historically have. We sort of tried to push the technology. It was a competition, and we weren't given a lot of information about the size of the bells and all the rest of it, the actual bell frame. We decided to locate the bells at the same height as they were in St Martin's in the Field. We also decided we wanted to make the bell tower to be the first that the public can actually get up into the belfry and literally see the bells. And we'd won the competition for ideas. What we did ultimately is separated the bell tower, which held the bells, and then the glass tower, because we sort of said, we want to still keep the glass tower, because we wanted something very tall and vertical. And we put the bells into a concrete structure next to it. We're going to sheath the thing in copper, because copper is an old material, and we wanted the old and the new. And this project became Perth's Millennium Project. So when Elizabeth Quay came onto the agenda, and I remember with our then chairman having to go to the government at the time and say, hey, you're going to have to put a caveat on the buildings, because you got to get the developers to put soundproofing on the windows. So it's no good building apartments around here and then having everyone complain about the bells ringing, because the bells were here first. It's like everyone wants to buy a cheap house at the end of the runway, but then they want to move the airport, and you just don't do that, right? So you need to double glaze the apartments and hotels. And sure, if they don't mind the bell ringing, they go out on their balcony and you can listen to it. But if you don't like it, you go back inside and close the windows up for the period of time that we ring the bells. Because everyone seems to forget that, and people are now saying, we want to put restrictions on the bell tower when you can ring and all the rest of it. Well, we already had this debate. We got a lot of feedback about the master plan, because originally we had a tunnel going underneath the Riverside Drive. That got cut out because of dollars. And some of the people said, bell towers the image of a bell tower was old and traditional. And we didn't want to do that because, we thought this is a millennium project. It's showing Perth is a brand new city. It's got 200 years of history, but it's got a great future. So we need to be the future as well. So, but the the comments that came back from the public got us thinking all again, and we thought, right, why don't we actually start to think about the historical context of the place? So originally, it was called Union Jack Square. There was the Perth Baths down there. But the other thing, they built boats there, and they were like sailing boats. So it was so we started to develop up the sails, and you can clearly see the direct translation from the place where they built boats with sails and the sails on the bell tower. So we modified the copper and the shapes of that area, and ultimately put it back to the community, and we interpreted the historical context of the place, and that was unanimously agreed by the public. Some people sort of kept thinking about the cost, but when you think about the cost, it's $5 million, which is not a lot of money, and that also included a couple of pavilions on the jetties, etc. So the final design was unanimously agreed to, and then we had to finesse the concept, develop up the drawings, tender it. When we tendered the job, it finally came on a budget, and we built it. It took a long time. It was an interesting project. There were a lot of opinions about the project, but it's there. And it still rings the bells, and it's part of our history.
Would you be interested in uncovering where this story actually began? Stay with me to hear what Mr. Reynolds has to say about the bell's origins, his insights and challenges.
This bell tower started as a Millennium project. I've become president of ANZAP, the Australian New Zealand Association of Bell Ringers. So when I started to work on it, I found I needed a major project for WA. Being connected to the mining industry, I started approaching mining companies, and I had some very good help in doing that. And I was also advised that the bells of St Martin's in the Fields were to be broken up, that a faculty had been issued by the Diocese of London for these historic bells to come out and recast into a slightly lighter 12. I had earlier tried to get the bells from St Martin's in Birmingham, but that turned into a bit of a game, and I walked away from it, particularly when the London 12 became available. I then approached mining companies through associates and obtained enough metal to augment the bells at 7.5 tonnes of bell metal provided by Renison. I had free shipping available, and all of the bells that were being reconditioned were sent back to 3 different businesses in England. And this lot were paid for by De Beers, the diamond company. They gave, I think from memory, it was 60,000 sterling to cast the new bells and to tune the whole lot as one running instrument of 15 bells. 15 being 2 diatonic octaves, with the middle C, the 8 at the front became the tenor of the back 8 at 15. But there was arguments as to whether it should be 4 4s, which is the normal numbers for change ringing, 8 and 12. So the project then was to build a tower at the university for its 75th anniversary. That was well underway, but it needed a government completion guarantee. But I had the builder organised, I had the concrete, steel, transport, all committed to do it. But then when the government failed to give the guarantee, the university project failed, and the bells were put into store, and then eventually they were put out from the store, and the state government took them over. Then came Richard Court, He was looking for a big project for the millennium.
The most famous bells are the 12 royal bells from the Church of St Martin in the Fields in London, which were cast in the 18th century and rang there until 1988, when they were gifted to Perth.
Let's hear from a heritage expert about the historical and cultural significance of these bells.
The Swan Bells really have an extraordinary history because coming from St Martin in the Fields Church in London, the bells were originally paid for by a former king. It meant that to leave the United Kingdom, they needed the permission of Queen Elizabeth II. And so a royal warrant was issued saying, you may here take the bells. It wasn't as if the tower was going to be left bellless. The part of the deal was swapping out the old bells and swapping in the new ones. The new St Martin in the Fields bells were lighter and in a brand new steel frame and lower down in the tower, so they didn't rock the church to bits. And so our bells, the original St Martin in the Fields bells, were retuned at the Whitechapel Bell Foundry and exported to Western Australia. And they were originally destined for the University of WA in a tower to be built by the boat shed. But that didn't happen because the Vice-Chancellor at the time, Professor Fay Gale, said, no, it's too masculine a sport. And so the bells languished in a warehouse in Perth until the day came when the Queen said, wait, where are my bells? What's happening? And so Richard Court was the then Premier. So he said, right, we'd better do something about it. And that was the catalyst that caused the bell tower competition to be set up and for Bill Hames to win the prize of doing the bell tower.
More bells were added, so we now have 18 bells hung for full circle change ringing in the English style, one of the largest peals of such bells in the world.
You sound very serious, Tony. I wonder why Barrack Square is the chosen location.
Let's hear from the former Premier at the time.
When we first came into government, I knew very little about these bells, but I was about to undertake a quick learning curve. I knew that back in 1988, these bells had been gifted, that they were very historic from the church St Martin in the Fields in London, Trafalgar Square. They had a very rich history, but we're in government in 1993. I just assumed that they had arrived and they'd been installed, but we had received some questions from the UK. What has happened to these bells? So I asked for a briefing, and what I learnt was that they had arrived, they'd been put into storage at an engineering yard. That wasn't suitable, so they were eventually put into a tin shed over at McGillivray Oval, which the University of Western Australia owned. But it became pretty obvious that this gift had to be properly utilised. And so the next question was, well, where would you build a bell tower and what design? And so we started a process of looking at locations. The first obvious one was at the university, next to the music school at Crawley, a site in Crawley where there is now a hotel. But the local community there did not, in the apartment buildings, did not want a bell tower next to them. We looked at the old Swan Brewery site, perhaps in the river. But then it became obvious that the most logical site was at the base of the city at Barrack Street. And at the same time, we had some issues to do with the old Barrack Street jetties. They certainly weren't up to standard. We had to rebuild that jetty infrastructure. The Rottnest ferries, for example, they needed new facilities for sewerage and refueling, and the jetties themselves were falling down. So we incorporated it incorporated the bell tower into the redevelopment of that Barrack Street jetty precinct. The total development was close to $100 million, but the bell tower itself was only a $5 million component of the redevelopment. So that was the basic process that we went through for location and design.
Visitors can watch the bells and ringers and even join a tour and have a go at chiming them.
So besides being the bell tower, it is a tourist attraction. It has been for 25 years and it has been an icon for Perth. I would really like to know, in this competitive tourism industry, how they keep it relevant and meaningful for visitors.
Now let's get some insights from the Chief Operating Officer about the bell tower, the tourism industry and the controversy.
So I don't actually think that tourism is a competitive industry, especially here in Perth. It's more about collaboration rather than competition. So what we found has worked really well for us is that collaboration and partnering with other tourism businesses, so such as the Perth Mint and the Hop On Hop Off bus. It's more about working together to create a great destination that people want to visit rather than trying to compete for visitors' attention. But I guess the bell tower is one of those places that you have to be there physically in order to get the full understanding or the full experience. Some things can't just be communicated over virtual reality or AI. And for us, it's about actually getting the chance to chime the bells yourself. So actually get a chance to pull on the ropes and make the bells ring. So that's an experience that you're not going to be able to replicate with virtual reality or AI. So that is something that we definitely try to keep alive. And I think travel and tourism is definitely one of those things that, as much virtual reality as there is, people are still going to want to travel and see places and things in person for themselves. So a lot of Perth locals would kind of have a bit of background information about the situation that the bell tower was built around. So it was a bit of controversy at the time that planning was in the works for the construction. A lot of people called it a waste of taxpayer money, and they just thought that there was better uses for that, which I guess makes a lot of sense. And I understand that people were upset about that. And to this day, it's still a very divisive topic amongst people. It comes up every election about what Perth needs to do with the bell tower. But where it is now currently, to close it or to demolish it will be far more costly and far more work than it is to keep it running. And we've spent a number of years working to make it a place that people want to visit, that they want to see. It might not necessarily be so for Perth locals, but definitely for people visiting Perth. It's definitely a very iconic building in the city and a landmark for Perth tourism, and we're very proud of that. But we do understand that, there is some underlying controversy around the structure itself. But the bells themselves, they were a gift from the Queen.
The Bell Tower Ringers are a voluntary association of skilled bell ringers, aged from their teens to their 80s, who gather to ring the bells at regular times and on special occasions.
I'd like to take everyone to get an insight into the bell ringing culture, its community, history and cultural significance to symbolise Perth's connection to global history.
We've been here for 25 years, and the way the bell tower has integrated itself into the society of Perth is quite interesting. Over time, though, it has become very important, not only because we ring the bells on special occasions, we're also a war memorial because we have the huge 6.5 ton Anzac bell above us. When I first came here 20 years ago, people were dissing the bell tower and didn't think it was anything much. Even in those early days, you went into a tourist shop in England, America, and looked for Perth, Western Australian literature, what was on the cover? The bell tower. It has become Perth, Sydney's Opera House. It works beautifully, and I think it will continue to grow as a community facility over the next 25 years and be even more integrated into the celebrations of the city, the commemorations, and just lots and lots of other exciting events. At the time this place was built, it was alone pretty much, apart from the few things around Barrack Square. There was the Esplanade Reserve on that side, Supreme Court Gardens on the other side. Now it's hemmed in by Elizabeth Quay and the tall buildings. So I think it probably would ask for a bit of breathing room, but that's not going to happen. But in 25 years, I think it would also say, I told you so, because there were a lot of critics at the time who said that it wouldn't work as a tourist attraction. And it has definitely worked supremely well because it is unique in the world. And I don't use the word unique very often, but it is the only bell tower that demonstrates this sort of ringing anywhere in the world. On one occasion, we were ringing here on a Thursday lunchtime, as we did every Thursday with visitors around upstairs. And this particular ringer was ringing, and unfortunately his trousers fell down. And when we'd stopped laughing and he'd stopped being red, we just got on and rang. But it was very, very funny indeed, poor chap. Luckily, he had clean underwear on, so everything, and a long shirt. But he hadn't done his belt up quite tight enough. It's not the first time that's happened, but here in a warm climate, it's not so bad. Back in England, where I came from, if it was a chilly night, you didn't want that sort of thing to happen. It was also a special moment when the Esplanade Reserve was being used for Symphony in the City with Wazzo. And the first time they had this performance, just before Christmas, they decided to end with a grand finale of the 1812 Overture. Now, the finale of the 1812 Overture involves bells ringing and cannons going off, and we managed to coordinate ringing these bells to the symphony orchestra. We had radio contact with the conductor, and he told us just when to start and when to stop. And it worked beautifully, and we brought the house down. The cannons were pretty spectacular as well. Quite a lot of bird life got a fright that evening, but it was a very, very special moment for the bell tower. It was always said to be one of the largest musical instruments in the world, and we were able to be a musical instrument with probably one of the most famous overtures in the world, Tchaikovsky's 1812. So those are two out of lots and lots of special moments in this place for me over the last 20 years.
The way we ring the bells here is to a very old art. It's an art that goes back 500 years or more, to the time of Queen Elizabeth I. The way that bells were rung in England then is much the same as the way that we ring them here today. So it's wonderful that we have these bells here we can ring and get in touch with so much of our history. The bell ringers play a very important part because they are maintaining this history and keeping it alive and keeping it going, so that people who can hear the bells can realise that what we're doing is just not something for today, but something that has been important in history for hundreds of years.
I'm the tower captain here, and people often ask me, what is the role of the tower captain? What do you do? Well, it's largely an administrative role, I suppose. You basically oversee the activities of the ringers themselves and you organise those activities. So we organise practices, we organise functions for the tower. So we're a bit of a go-between between the tower management and the bell ringers. So every tower will have a tower captain, but it's really just an organisational role. It's not as officious as it sounds. So there's actually a lot of community and a lot of tradition in bell ringing. And the community seems to come from the nature of the instrument itself, I think. I mean, most musical instruments, you can make music on your own, but that's not really the case with a tower bell. I mean, you can make it sound, you can make a noise, but it's not music. You know, to make the music that we play, change ringing, you need a band of ringers to do it. So you need to be ringing with other people. So automatically there's a sense of community there. And the music that we play is very sort of interconnected. There's a lot of interaction amongst the ringers. So I think that as well sort of creates that sense of common purpose amongst the ringers. In terms of the tradition, I mean, bell ringing goes back a long way. I mean, back to the middle of the 16th century, really. And look, probably for the last 200 years, the music that we play, the way that we play it, that hasn't really changed. There's a lot of structure in the music that we play, and there's a lot of regulations and conventions that sort of control that structure or manage that structure. In fact, there's also a central council which oversees the application of those rules. So while you have some scope to be creative, you're pretty much confined by the nature of the music itself. So I think that's probably what's not stifled its development, but that's why it's sort of remained sort of unchanged for so long. In terms of bell ringing, there's a lot of moving parts. You have the tower management, you have the bell ringers, we have the public who come to the tower. And so you're sort of juggling a few balls in the air at the one time. But the way we sort of keep all that together is teamwork. Teamwork is the underlying principle in how we operate. That's teamwork within the tower when the bell ringers are ringing. You know, there's a lot of teamwork involved in the music that we make. But it's also teamwork amongst the ringers and the tower management, as well as the people who come to visit the tower. So we're sort of all working together to try and achieve a common goal, to promote the tower and to promote bell ringing, the music that we make.
In the bell tower, you can see the oldest bell in Australia, as well as the biggest bell in Australia, the mighty Anzac Bell, which weighs 6.5 tons and was cast right here in Perth in 2018.
Let's hear how the Anzac Tour started to honour and commemorate Australian and New Zealand soldiers' sacrifices during World War I.
And this was to be called the Anzac Bell, and it would be the largest chiming bell in Australia, coming in at 6.5 tons. It rang for the very first time publicly on the 11th of November, 2018. And that was exactly 100 years to the day, to the minute, from the time of the end of the First World War. And then our manager decided that he would like a tour that was centred on the Anzac Bell, a purpose-built tour for the Anzac Bell. And knowing that I had a big interest in military history, he asked me if I would like to write the script for the tour. So I went away and I did a lot of research. You can't write about something which is real history without actually having all the facts. I went down to a museum in Albany. There's a very famous, very wonderful museum down in Albany called the Anzac Experience. And I got a lot of information from them, and I did a lot of research online. And I finished up with a script, which we ran as a trial for the staff. And I had to write it into some sort of sequence. And I decided, after some reflection, that it should be chronological. 8 months of bloody fighting. At the end of it all, absolutely nothing was gained except a reputation. And these men got the most fantastic reputation. They were Anzacs. And even to this very day, 110 years later, they still have that pride in that name, Anzacs. So they really caught my imagination when you read the story, because a lot of what you hear about Gallipoli, a lot of what you hear about the Anzacs is fiction, not fact. But when you start to research and read some of the authorities that were there, you start to realise just what a futile war it was. And the more you read about it, that led on to other things. So I got more into the First World War. I was already a bit interested in military history, but I was born during the Second World War. So my main interest and knowledge was around the Second World War. That got me into the First World War, and from there I sort of followed it through, because the Anzacs at Gallipoli was sort of right at the beginning of the war, and the war went on for 4 years. And the casualties got worse. Ordinary soldiers were considered expendable. An officer was rated by how many of his soldiers were killed. The more of his soldiers were killed, the better an officer he was. Monash had a completely different idea about that. Monash was really, really good. He looked after his men, and he didn't believe in getting killed unnecessarily. But other officers, as I said, thought that if they were doing a good job, they'd be getting lots of men killed. So when you get into that side of things, and you read the rest of the First World War, and the hundreds of thousands of troops that were killed, it becomes just absolutely fascinating.
From the deck on the top floor, you can get a fine view of Durbal Yerrigan, or the Swan River, and if you don't mind heights, you can walk around the viewing platform to look at the old and new buildings in Bulu, the lovely city of Perth. There is a carillon which will play you a tune of your choice.
There are just over 2 chromatic octaves, which makes this a carillon. Less than 2 octaves, or if missing any semitones, it would be called a chime. It came with a range of tunes, national anthems, folk music and classical music. Arranging music is time-consuming, as not all music plays well due to bell harmonics. A limit of 2 octaves and rapid succession of notes on the bells tend to dissolve to mush. One example of music added is the science fiction double feature from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which works well because of its minor key. Of course, we are always open to requests for something, preferably in a minor key, and for a minor fee.
The bell tower is also involved in community engagements.
Community engagement plays a pivotal role in every aspect of the bell tower's operations. Our current marketing campaigns are targeting local families so that we can provide something that's fun and affordable, as well as highlighting Perth's history and cultural events within Perth. We're slowly branching out to include the interstate visitors and also international visitors, with an overarching goal of being an icon of the Perth city. A really easy way to connect with locals is through social media, so we're quite active on our social media channels, which include Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. Obviously, as these are evolving as well, we try to keep up, and we place most of our ads on here as an affordable alternative, but also we can reach the local public a lot easier, and we can showcase everything that we do. A really exciting addition we have is a lot more Indigenous artwork by our wonderful artist Fiona Reedy. She is under the name Dejinda Carl Dreaming. She does beautiful artworks, and we are really excited to be able to stock these in our gift shop, as well as have them displayed on our uniforms and the new window wrap that we've put out the front.
Hello, I'm Tracy. I'm from Waitok. I think this is a wonderful event for families to come up here and see the beautiful views of the Swan River, and come and meet our artist Fiona from Jinder Cole Dreaming, and see her beautiful work, her artwork in progress.
And as a venue for events,
The
Bell Tower has been holding events for many years now. We can host a lot of corporate events, we host a lot of weddings, celebrations, engagement parties, and we really have such a beautiful spot for celebrating. We are such a unique building. We have both indoor and outdoor spaces. This is our beautiful observation deck up on level 6, which is just a really glorious spot. And we're located right in the city, so we are a prime location for events. Over the years and just recently, we've really started to try and target events that suit us a bit more. So we find that we are a really perfect spot for people that are looking for a space that's quite intimate, that's very different, and that has a bit more of a relaxed vibe as well. And because I have a bit of a background in weddings, we've really started to try and shift focus to weddings as well, and shifting to a smaller wedding demographic. What we're seeing in the trends in the Perth wedding market at the minute is that people are really looking for that small, intimate ceremony and something that's a bit more cost effective as well. So we have just this year launched our elopement package, and this is for weddings where you've got 25 guests. You just want a nice, short and all-inclusive ceremony. So we provide all the furniture, and we have partnerships with a photographer, a celebrant and a bar attendant. So people and their most close loved ones can come and have a really intimate celebration of their love. We've been fostering a lot of relationships between local Perth suppliers, and that's been really benefiting us as well to have that partnership where we can promote other local businesses too, and they can promote us in turn.
After 25 years, I wonder if the bell tower has lived up to the vision of the original plan as part of Western Australia's cultural identity.
It has certainly lived up to what we wanted to achieve in the first place. Today we have a unique, world-class musical instrument that is the envy of campanologists around the world. So many of them visit here because it's just a unique facility where you get easy access to the ringing. You can then go and physically watch the bells in action, and the public are allowed in. It's quite rare in the world for such a significant peal of bells to have such access, and I'm so pleased that it's become very popular.
We look forward to welcoming you to the Bell Tower, Perth.
Are we all standing ready for Lizzie's video?
Hey guys, bell ringing is about to begin.
Okay. Look, 2. Trouble's going.
That's 20 seconds.
Let me think.
Yo, don't trip.
Found it really fascinating, and the fact that some of the bells that also came from England was interesting. It was lovely to see the bells in the tower, and I actually had a practice. I used to ring years ago, and I was allowed to ring one of the bells today, which was amazing.
Recommend the tour. It's very limited. We had a good experience and enjoyed it. It was unique. Not something we expected to do to date, but there you are. I came along, seen it, and done it, enjoyed it.
Recommended.